Hello, and happy Labor Day. Welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman. Today we're talking to Mark Leto. Mark is the athletic trainer at Hobart High School in Hobart, Indiana. Mark has been an athletic trainer for over 30 years. First as a student at Ball State, then an internship and a season internship with the Indianapolis Colts, and finally back to Hobart High School to be the athletic trainer that he currently is now. Mark has many stories. A lot of them to do with athletic training and some of them not, that are just as interesting. We look forward to hearing his stories. So let's go off the roll with Mark Leto. Hello, welcome to Off the Roll. Today I'm on the campus of Ball State University. It is game day for the Ball State Cardinals versus Western Illinois today. And we have as our guest Mark Leto. Mark is the athletic trainer at Hobart High School and also our medical observer for tonight's football game. So we'll talk a little bit about all that stuff. But we're going to get started with Mark. Good to have you here, Mark.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks for having me.
Well, to get this going, what I like to do is I like to ask you kind of how you got started in athletic training. What was your first experiences, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Well, it was a fellow MAC athletic trainer. Went to OU by a guy by the name of Sam Ford. He was the first teacher athletic trainer in Lake County, and I happened to have him as a freshman health teacher. And then my senior year, I decided that I wanted to go the athletic training route and become a teacher. And so he kindly let me into his athletic training room after football season was over. And so I started learning the ropes the winter/spring of 1984 at Hobart High School.
So what was some of your kind of first experiences with Sam? I mean, you had to have obviously wet behind the ears, trying to pick up little things here and there. But what are some of the things you remember from that?
You know, he was such a the front runners, the pioneers, so to speak. They knew so much about bracing and splinting and how to use orthoplast and how to use foam and just how to make something out of nothing. You know, it wasn't they could pick up a book and order it. And if they could, they couldn't afford it. And so I learned so much about that part of athletic training from him and how to even do some rehab techniques and, put E-stem into a whirlpool, totally contradict what you would think to do, right?
Yeah.
And so, I learned some of those techniques and what a fantastic person and, what a great first mentor. And I say first because there's many. And as we go through this, I think you always have a mentor.
So is Sam gone now, or is he still
He's
around?
no longer teaching. He still lives in Knox.
Okay.
And but he's out of teaching, and I think he's doing some substitute teaching over in that area.
Yeah.
But he retired 3 years ago, and I really, we've emailed a couple times, but really haven't heard much from him since.
Cool. All right. Did he have any Kramer roll?
Yes, he did have Kramer roll.
I know. I was just on that. I just joined that secondary school.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
On Facebook, and I laughed because somebody had posted on there that they had this plethora of Kramer roll. What the hell do you do with this? So
some of the old stuff that no one knows about. Like throw out some cinder suds or some methylate.
I think kids would totally freak if we brought that stuff out. Like, what are you doing with it? I'm going to slap some atomic bomb on this thing.
And then when you get a little bit of warmth going, let me know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you graduated from Hobart High School in '84. Yeah. And then that led you to here, right?
Yeah. So I come to Ball State and I interviewed with Tony and with Don and Judy and
who is Judy?
She was the women's athletic trainer at the time.
So that would Judy, not Mary O'Carroll.
No, it was before Mary.
Judy Chafin.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And Mary, I think, was here too. And so I don't know, maybe about a week, 3 weeks later, I got a letter just saying that I'd been accepted into the program. And so then they got a hold of me early, and actually I came down my freshman year and started working football.
So where were you living at the time?
They put us up in Elliott.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's where I was living in Elliott, and that's where the football team was during the two-a-days, the traditional two-a-days. And so I worked with Don, and Tony was there, and Bruce Reuter, and Doug Dietzel, and Joanne, and Deb, and Brett, and I mean, just, some fantastic people.
Yeah.
Just some awesome friendships were made, and, it was the hard-working days, and you just learn to respect each other because everybody went through it.
So do you think that because you had a little bit of experience, that's why they had you come out as a freshman?
Maybe. I mean, I was probably back in 1984, it was a rarity to have a certified athletic trainer at a high school.
Right.
And, like I said, he was the first person in Lake County to be that teacher athletic trainer, and he'd started in 1979. So I had always been around an athletic trainer as an athlete. So I always knew what that was. So maybe so. He wrote me a nice letter of recommendation, and so did our head football coach, Coach Howell. And so it was really, maybe that's what they saw. I don't know.
So were there any other freshmen out there with you at that time?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah. Who would you to come in with as a class with that group? Would anybody else be in your class that you came in that year?
There was Jan Wilson. I would really have to go back and look, to be honest, Troy, because that's been a few years.
Oh yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So there was a few that came in that group, and I hung out with the older people. I don't know why. Yeah. I bonded with them out at football. And so there I was. It was like they accepted me, and there was no looking back.
Okay. So the first year you're out at football, because it wasn't a major at the time. What was your major was teaching? Right?
Teaching, health education, and a minor in athletic training.
Right.
And I worked that football season up until really basketball started. Then I got pulled with Tony. To go to men's basketball, which was really, really rare.
Yeah.
And I didn't take any heat for it, but I think there were some people that weren't happy with it.
Yeah.
But there was no travel or anything like that. It was just covering practice.
Yeah,
and I couldn't tape. I couldn't do any of that stuff.
Right.
I just sat, and just did all the work that needed to be done before practice started. So Tony didn't have to do it.
So who was teaching your classes at that time?
Oh, the staff.
Yeah,
Mary O'Carroll, and then Tony taught some classes. The upper level classes, I think Don was teaching, Vogelsang was teaching, and all those guys. But I just had Mary and Tony at that first year.
Yeah.
That's all they really did.
Okay. And then, so you're in the program, you're got a minor, you're doing the teaching. Then you had the next couple of years that you were obviously in the program. What were you doing the next couple of years?
Then I did a stint just in the training room. Then I did spring football. And then, it all kind of runs together. I did men's track, and then I did baseball. And then my final year, I did women's field hockey, and then men's volleyball.
Okay.
Those are the two last sports that I worked as an undergrad here.
Yeah, and men's volleyball has always been an interesting sport to work. So, any stories that you want to? Those guys
were fantastic. The athletes always treated us really well, and men's volleyball, we were invited to everything and anything that they did. And it was really neat because we. That team qualified for the Final Four, so we went out to Pauley Pavilion.
Oh, wow.
And Dan Teeney and we traveled out to Pauley Pavilion, and they put us up in a hotel and all that fun stuff. But we got to watch a movie being made, and we got to walk on Pauley Pavilion's floor. And,
right.
Dan decided on our day off that he would go to Hermosa Beach and decided he wanted to get a suntan. Well, Dan's kind of a redheaded kid and didn't really put any sunscreen on. So as the night went on, I had left and went with one of the players, and we went and got some gifts from the gift shop and all that stuff from the bookstore. And so we get back, and Dan is as red as these lockers are sitting next to us, and we're afraid. So we put him in the bathtub to try to cool him off, and we find aloe somewhere. I don't know where we found the aloe, but we lathered Dan up, and I don't know, about 3 o'clock in the morning, he had to go to the bathroom, and you could pretty much hear him sticking to the sheets because there was so much aloe on his body. Now, the interesting thing is we get to the airport, and as we take off, all that aloe, Dan starts to blister.
Oh, my gosh.
So we land in Indy, and those blisters popped. His T-shirt's just soaked. It looks like he had been in the shower. And so he's hurting. I mean, he is hurting. He is a mess. Well, then back then, Ball State's Finest pick us up, and it's an old school bus.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those old school buses?
They still have a few of those around.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so there was no air. And we get on that thing, and that poor guy is just miserable. So then he gets in the we get back to Muncie, and now he's got to drive back to Aurora because he's got to fly out the next day because his sister's graduating from college. And I think she was in Texas. So still sunburned. He's driving a Chevette with no air and gets down to Cincinnati, and the next day he's got to leave to go to Texas to do to watch his sister graduate. And peak temperature there was like 110. Oh. So the poor guy just got worked like there was no tomorrow. I love that story about Dan. I felt so bad for him, and he gets the chills, and we're trying to get him to drink, and we didn't want to have to take him to the hospital or anything like that. So we put him in a tub and everything.
At the incident, so this is after you guys had played.
Yeah, this is after we lost. Yeah. I think we ended up winning. I think the kids ended up getting third. Yeah. And then we had an extra day to ourselves before we flew out. So it was pretty funny. On the way out, Coach Shondell was sitting next to Olivia Newton-John and didn't realize really who she was. And everyone's asking for her autograph, and she apologizes to him, and he's like, well, I was going to apologize to you because I'm kind of famous.
Typical Don.
Yeah.
Typical Don.
So,
I'm the father of modern volleyball. You don't know who the hell I am?
Yeah, exactly. So it was pretty funny, and that was different. So it was a neat experience. It was a great experience. So
tell me about the thing about. What do you think? So you were here in '84. Don resigns in '85. Tell me about what it was like when Rex Sharp comes in.
Different. I mean, a good different. It was, Don was very militaristic, and kept everybody in line and in shape, and made sure everything. Rex brought more of a openness to the program. And it was just a different style, and not saying either one's right or wrong. Right. It was just different, and it was fun. We enjoyed it. We had a really interesting time. Rex accommodated everybody. Wanted everybody to be a part of something, right. And Rex brought a family atmosphere. Yeah. And Tony had it, and the other staff had it. Don was just very militaristic, and this is the way it's done, and right. And that's fine. That's one way of leading, and Rex brought a different way of leading, and both are good. It was just Rex really brought a change that I think athletic training was looking for.
Yeah, especially Rex being the first really head athletic trainer, and pretty much since with Neil being here so long, that was an athletic trainer and not a physical therapist, and right. So that, not that saying that mentality is bad. It's just that's a different different focus on things from an athletic training standpoint. Correct. Versus a PT standpoint.
Right, and PTs traditionally are in the clinic, and they're it's run more of a business like, right. where athletics is athletics, and it's still very important. It's important because you're working with Division I athletes or athletes in general, but it's more of a relaxed setting, and you're dealing with a population that statistically wants to get healthy. Right. Where when you're working in a PT clinic, you may be sitting on a lawsuit where someone's going to try to sue somebody because they slipped on a cherry pit. And so, the mentality of that patient versus the athlete's mentality is night and day.
Right. Yeah. So Rex brings this family atmosphere in 1985. I know there's stories out there about Rex's first night in town. You don't have to tell those stories, but share with me a little bit about some of the more memorable times that you had kind of outside of that or maybe inside some road trips. Obviously, there were some legendary road trips that happened. You can, again, this is a podcast, so you can kind of skew it however you want to skew it. Okay. But I think the thing is that the listeners that are going to be listening to this are going to want to know. I mean, let's face it, Mark. When I say the name Leto, there's people that instantly connect that to Ball State athletic training, whether you want to or not.
That's scary because there's some great people, and I don't know if I even need to be. I'm even close to those guys.
Yeah.
When you start talking about JD and Snow and Hoover and the Rex Calls and Jack Mansfields and Jay Brett. Those guys are just unbelievable. I think I may be just a little bit more jocularity. I always like to be like the John Coddington people, and have fun. And, Rex fit that. Yeah. And there were pranks pulled almost every day on somebody.
What was the most memorable prank that you saw when you were here?
When Joe Burton set up the vacuum in the football stadium to go off when Tony opened up the door. And then Tony faked a heart attack. So Joe, being the EMT he was, wanted to take over. I just think he wanted to kiss Tony, that's all.
That very well may have been, yeah.
So, that was, and then there were the accidental pranks that weren't supposed to happen, and I think they did. And, when Crutches hit the gas pedal on the golf cart and it almost ran into Tex's office back under the old stadium, And,
yeah.
And it wasn't even meant to be a prank. It just happened. It was like that couldn't have been planned any better. We had so many of those and, so much fun. And, from Neil's bachelor party at the house that Dantini and I lived in to Rex's bachelor party where Dietzel was and, where Doug stayed. And, the year that we had the initiation for the freshmen that got in the program at the townhouse, and Chris Robinson brings in a bale of hay because we that story goes without being told. So it's just it all boils down to all of us getting together and having fun.
Right.
There were so many evenings that Rod and I, Stanford and I, we'd get a pony keg and it'd sit outside on our ledge, and people would just come over with a video, and we'd put it in and watch, and people would drink and just hang out, and it would be everybody, and that's what those are my most memorable times about this program, because if someone needed help, we all showed up. If someone was moving, it was unfortunate, but we all showed up to help pack. I think that's the neatest thing about Ball State, and it was always family to me. And when I came here, my parents didn't go to college, and so Rex and Tony turned into those adults that had been to college, that when you ran into rough roads or when you ran into you were in a funk, those guys got you out of it. And it was either, hey, let's go get a beer, let's go get a pork tenderloin and a beer, and let's go to Red and Roos, or let's go to Pete's Duck Inn, or let's go somewhere and let's just get away. And that part of it is just such a memorable part to me that's what I build on. I love those stories. I love going to Red Roos. I love just getting in a car going. When we went to the 500 for the first time, and sat in turn 4, and lady made fun of Tony because she thought he was staring at her and made a comment, and she came over to him and gave him a hard time, and it was actually me that did it. I think the best road trip that I'll never forget is we went to Northern Illinois. It was Brad Dasher, me, and Tony all staying in the same room. And I told this story a million times. I'm going to tell it again. So Brad and I stay out a little bit extra longer than what we were supposed to. And we took a few road signs from the Illinois Department of Transportation. which ended up in our hotel room.
It's okay. I'm sure there's a statute of limitations on all this.
Yeah, hopefully it's over. So Brad somehow took the rollaway, which is the foot of my bed, and so I'm in the bed. Tony's already been asleep for a while. We come in pretty drunk, and Dasher falls asleep, and I fall asleep, and all of a sudden, Tony, and I'm going to do my best Tony impersonation I can. Leto, wake up! You hear that shit? I went, well, now I do because you woke my ass up, Tony. Brad's snoring like there's no tomorrow. Well, do something. What do you want me to do? Kick him. I kick him, and Dasher sits up and starts throwing punches in the air, wanting to fight. I'm like, there, I did. I woke him up. So Tony, I guess at some point in time, turns the air conditioning all the way down so it never shuts off. It just runs the whole time. Tony wakes up with a head cold. The next day, not doing well. It's a night game. Well, then Phil Nelson comes walking in, one of the equipment managers, and sits on the edge of Tony's bed. Well, Tony's bed stands straight up. Get off my bed!
And you gotta cast a picture here. How large was Phil at this time?
Well, do research on John Candy, because that Phil was John Candy. We went to a wedding in Dunkirk, Indiana, with Rick Crunchy Hunt, who was one of the football managers, and he told everybody John Candy was going to be at his wedding. So Phil and God love Phil, because there were nights that Phil, David, Jessup, and I, we would just sit in our condo and play shots a minute until finally someone gave up, and watch a Monty Python's Holy Grail. So it was the good old days. And then Catherine Cantor would come over, or Linda Wolf, and we would Cheryl Store. We'd get together, and it would just be a fun time. Yeah.
There was definitely, I think, a cast of characters that was not just in athletic training, but around this group and I think the thing that you talked about, Rex didn't distinguish, like, you were equipment manager, you can't come with us and have fun. No, it was bring everybody in. Let's have a good time.
Yep.
And that included docs and everybody else too. I mean,
you were all working hard hours. You're working long hours, and it's like let's make the best of it.
Yeah.
We all picked this career. We're all picking this, choosing as the students to do this. So let's do this.
Yeah.
And I think that was such the lucrative part about being an athletic training student and coming to Ball State, and being a high school athletic trainer. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of kids that have come here.
Yeah.
And I always tell them it's the family atmosphere.
Right.
And I always hate, if it's never that for people.
Right.
Because I think that's the neatest thing. And, it was a family away from family.
Yeah.
Teeny and I have done a lot of things together. You and I have done a lot of things together. Right. You guys have come up to, baseball games and stayed at my parents' house and threw beer cans on their front lawn. And, all the incredible things that we've done.
Yeah.
I remember I never really cared about the Kentucky Derby, but Rex brought that up, and we're at his old house, and, we're out there with the Kentucky Derby, and there's some poor kid riding a bike, not watching us, not paying attention, and he smacks right into Rex's mailbox. And Tony's like, "You see that shit?" The poor kid's on the ground. 10 athletic trainers and students are just standing around watching the poor kid.
Yeah.
He starts cussing us out because we're laughing. We're not helping. We're just laughing.
He was laughing, yeah.
So it was, just some neat times. I mean, just, it was what I needed, to grow up. It was the niche that fit me well. And I think everybody around us just had a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a definite, the definite kind of description of that time period was very much a family atmosphere. And like you said, even through the tough times, when there were tough times.
Oh yeah.
We both experienced those times.
Sure.
And there was always that reassurance that, hey, it's going to be okay. We're gonna take care of you.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And some people may not have felt that way, but I don't think I ever did, and I don't think you did. And
no.
and it was very much more about ensuring that we were going to be successful even through some obstacles and tough times.
Sure.
So that, because the end game was when you left here, you're going to have that resiliency to handle whatever you're going to have to handle. So,
right. I mean, they it was. I think a lot of it was on purpose to make you mentally tough.
Yeah.
To think on your feet. I think that's one of the biggest things that Ball State, athletic training really did. Was like, you got to think on your feet, and if something needs to be done, it's usually athletic trainers that do it and the equipment guys. And so we do that, and that's what we do. And I think, that was a mentality that Don had and Rex had it. It was just a different way of having it, and it worked for people, and that's the neat thing. And so many good people have come out of it, you and even, the GAs that weren't necessarily Ball State kids, right. They came here and it was almost instant that they felt this relationship with everybody.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit too. I mean, so you graduate from Ball State when? 1990. Okay. And then your first job is?
With Central Indiana Sports Medicine with Dr. Matchett's group.
Yeah. And you were going out to Yorktown High School too, correct?
That was in 89, 90 I did. I filtered out to Yorktown. I did the internship with the Colts in 89.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about that, because you were doing an internship with one of the most infamous times with the Indianapolis Colts.
It was different, and it was long hours, 6 a.m. to 10, 11 o'clock at night. And we were making $100 a week, as interns. And I remember this. I remember, so in 88, 89, I was a student, college student athletic trainer on the IATA.
Right, yes.
And got on that board. And so I go to my first meeting, and Hunter Smith is sitting across from me, who was the head athletic trainer for the Colts at the time. And he's like, "Hey, Mark, you want to work in the NFL?" I go, "Sure." Yeah, okay. Again,
the things that happen because you're in the room.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with Ball State. It's the marketing part of it. It's the all of the knowledge and the people that know about Ball State. And I'll get to another story here about that. But so I show up, and he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So January comes around, he goes, "Hey, I need you to apply." So I applied about 10 of them, like everybody would do back then, right? Anyone kind of local. And they bring me down in February. I tape and to show them how I can set up machinery and all that. And I end up getting a gig with them. And they call me like in April or May, somewhere in there, and said, "Hey, we're going to take you. You're one of our interns." So I fill out paperwork and all that. Well, we're going to the NCAA tournament, and I get a phone call, pick up the red phone. It was kind of one of those jokes from Airplane. But so I pick it up, and I had also applied with the Bears, and they offered me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I'm in this, this ethical dilemma. I grew up as a Bear fan.
Fred Cato was
the head trainer with the Bears. Yeah. So, I'm in this ethical battle. And so, I call Rex like everybody does. What do I do? And he's like, "Well, you're an Indiana guy, type thing. And this would really be great for our program." And
right.
So I'm like, all right. So I made a decision, and I go with the Colts. And so I'm getting ready to go. And Rex's like, "Hey, man, you can't screw this up." He goes, don't be stupid. Don't do anything dumb. This is great for our program, right?
Yeah.
So I get down there, 10 North American vans show up. They unload. We do all this stuff. One of the veterans shows up.
Where was training camp?
At Anderson.
We
were in Anderson. So veterans show up, and a player by the name of Dwayne Bickett walks in. Big guy, just a massiss man. USC graduate.
He was their number one pick that year.
Yeah, not that year. But that was Andre Rison was our number one pick.
Okay.
So Bickett shows up, and he just grabs me by the arm, and he goes, "Hook me up." And he takes his shoe off, and he sets on a table and points to the E-stem machine. So I'm like looking around like, what am I going to do? So I hook him up. So, I hook him up and got the old 4 pads on him. And I said, "All right, let me know when you start to feel it." He's like, "I'm in the NFL. You just turn it up till I tell you to stop." I'm like, "Oh, great. This is going to go good." So I'm not really paying attention. I got tunnel vision. I'm turning this E-stem up. And I go, it's getting high. And I'm like, are you sure you're all right? I'm fine. I said, just keep going. So I keep pressing. In the meantime, there's like 50 people around me now. And I can't feel it. All of a sudden, he starts flopping on the table like a fish out of water, screaming, turn it off, I'm dying. I'm like, oh my God, I'm fired day one. Rex is going to kill me. Now, here's my keys, here's my t-shirt. It's been nice athletic training, have a good life, right? And then all of a sudden he sits up, he goes, gotcha, rookie. I'm like, oh my God. That was just like the worst pimp job I've ever had in my life. It was like, okay, you got me. You did. I my everything. I was done. Put a fork in me. So that was neat. That was really pretty cool. And when they messed with you, you knew they wanted you to be a part of it. So it ended up being 3 years with them as an intern and a 6-month intern, which was great. And I think after I got done, there was a lot of Ball State people that got to do that same thing. Had that great experience.
Yeah, I mean, because like when you were the 6-month intern, Michael was there.
Yeah.
Now that's the year that I was in Philadelphia.
Yep.
We had that great photo together and stuff.
Yeah.
So who were the interns there with you when you were there that year?
There was a bunch. There was Purdue guys. Troy Maurer. He's I think still the assistant at Miami.
Yeah.
A couple others. Some have passed and some have passed away, and haven't kept much touch with them. Al Schufert was there. Al's moved around in pro football and did some NASCAR stuff with Joe Gibbs Racing.
Okay. Yeah.
Good guy.
I remember that.
Yeah, good guy. Real good guy.
Yeah.
And so, Michael followed me. He was one of the seasonal guys, and then he ended up getting a 6-month job after I did.
Right.
So, I mean, what a great feather in the cap of Ball State.
Yeah.
And back to another Ball State story, and people, when you say you went to Ball State, it was kind of funny. I had one of my former students who ended up coming to Ball State, Jessica Turka. She ended up winning the Kramer Scholarship.
Right.
And to apply for the Kramer Scholarship everything was blinded. So where I worked, where I went to college, all that stuff was left off everything. And same with Jess. And so I get a phone call from Kramer and saying, hey, your student, Jessica, has won the Jack Kramer. And I'm like, what? And so I'm talking to the guy. And so he's like, now I know it's late and, she's probably not going to be able to fly out and make it. But, are you going to the NAT? I said, yeah, I'm going. He goes, well, we'll give you the award and all that. And I'm like, all right. He's like, well, tell me a little bit about you because I know nothing.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'm up here at Hobart High School, Northwest Indiana, and I'm a Ball State graduate. And he stops. He goes, you're part of the Ball State Mafia. And I went, what? And he goes, you guys are everywhere. You guys, it's all about you guys and athletic training. He goes, it's just like, this person, that person. It's just so much networking. And when you said Ball State athletic training, it was just such, it brought so much pride to you because people would say, here's Kramer saying Ball State Mafia. And I'm like, what? And so, I mean, it really warmed your heart because you were part of that program. And Jessica got one of the biggest awards, that Kramer offers. And it was just, a neat experience, one of those that you just never forget. Yeah, no, and I think that, it's interesting when it really is the forefathers that set the groundwork for that. Yeah, I mean, the stories that I've heard from Glenn about Bud, and then Hoove. I mean, the thing about it was Hoove. Dick Hoover, in all those years of opening up all these clinics across the country. I mean, that's how he spread the gospel of Ball State athletic training was doing all that. Yeah, and then that created connections and stuff, and then people getting hired and landing in places and right. It is, and that's, you've heard me say this. I mean, Ball State athletic training is everywhere. You cannot go. I don't think you can go anywhere in the United States and not talk to another athletic trainer and say, "I'm from Ball State." Right. And they'll go, "I know so and so." Yeah, exactly. Did you know? Yes. I met so and so here. Or I met so and so there. Yeah. And maybe it might make some people mad if they listen to this podcast, but I don't think there's a whole lot of the West Virginia people like to say. Yeah. West Virginia and the Indiana State people like to say Indiana State, but I would think it'd be hard pressed to find another group that, and again, I think it is that family kind of atmosphere that
that was started a long time ago with JD and Cindy and those guys, and then carried on by Rex, and then carried on definitely by Neil.
Yes.
That really kind of has perpetuated all this.
Yes.
With that.
Yeah, and and then there's so many other players in that. I mean, there are a lot of those founding people, and then just the off branches of people that have gone out and done things. And I mean, I'm not, like you said, you can count on those founding people, but gosh, then the people that went out and just talked about athletic training and Ball State athletic training.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's pretty cool. And,
it is. It's extremely cool. And one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast is that these stories get told because it's important for this next generation of these entry-level master students to hear these stories, and maybe understand a little bit about why it is so important.
And when they get out there and someone gets excited because they're talking to somebody that went through Ball State's program, they now can put a little bit more. They have a little bit more background.
Yeah.
And the background was taught when we were hanging out at the Try Guy house, or where Sean and I lived, or those were the times we got to really know each other.
Yeah, if we weren't both working, we'd be doing this podcast from the Chug.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
The Chug on Penny Beer Night. Yeah.
Chug, Penny Beer Night. Jody Wood would be here.
Yeah.
Trying to win contests, and Jessup would be the guy spraying the bottle. So, I mean, and we'd always try to help each other. And, we would make fun of each other like there was no tomorrow.
Right.
But in the turn, though, it would be like, hey, if you needed a hand, we were there. And I think that's the fun part of it, that we just had so much fun with each other, and there was no rules. You can make fun of anything. Anything was wide open.
Yeah.
And nowadays, unfortunately, that's kind of gone by the wayside.
Right.
And and what you did, though, was we developed thick skin.
Right.
So that when you had a coach chewing your ass, you're like, I had people calling me worse than this. I don't really care.
Yeah.
And you're a non-entity to me. So as Rex would always have on the door,
a
non-entity. And that's, you put it in perspective, our job is to take care of athletes. Yeah. And it's not to win a game. It's not to lose a game. It's to make sure that, that person, as an athlete, when it's all said and done, they can still do what they want to do. Yeah.
No, and I think that was always the end game. That was the message that was always preached, and we all did our very best to try to emulate that as much as possible.
Sure.
I've stayed here till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning treating athletes. I think you probably stayed up all night treating athletes just to get them ready to go, because that was it. We're going to take care of the student athlete.
Right.
If we can get them back out there wherever they're going to, the court, the field, whatever.
That's exactly right.
That was what was emulated with that, and there wasn't any textbooks or research studies or journal articles that ever talked about those things. No. However, they were just as important as those things were.
It's picking up the bottle of Jack and sitting there. How do you handle this?
Yeah.
And sure, there's purpose for research based. I agree. But gosh dang, and I've gotten into a big not argument, but just a discussion. What's the validity of taping an ankle? The validity may not be there after 5 minutes, but the 3 minutes that athlete sat with you and had a discussion, you now understand more about them.
Right.
Which, when it comes to mental health, we've opened a door. Yeah. And you can tell me research based that taping an ankle doesn't mean anything. That's great. But that time that athlete sat with me, you know how much more I learned, and that's our job. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's one of the very few healthcare professions, in my book, that you almost have an unlimited amount of time with your patient population.
That's right.
You spend so many hours and holidays and whatnot with them.
Yeah.
That you are probably, I hate to say this because Angie brought this up when we were trying to do her first part. She goes, I'm now treating kids of the kids I treated when I first started this job.
Yeah.
And you know them. I mean, that's the thing about those kids coming up. Hey, I knew your mom and dad, and he was as much full of crap as you are right
That's
now.
right. Yeah. That's right. And then, being in the same town for that long. It's like 30th year at Hobart. So I mean, that's the crazy thing that you come across, and our coaching staff were players for us.
Yeah.
So I knew them as players. And like I tell them, I treat our kids today no different than I treated you back then. And the bottom line is that I want our sports to win just as much as anything, but I also want our kids to understand that their health is first. Yeah. So it's fun. Awesome.
All right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So you were here. We talked about the internship with the Colts. The one thing you have to tell this story. So you're 1 year with Sean Comer as your roommate. This guy, Sean's the associate athletic trainer here at Ball State with football, but it was Mark's roommate his first year in grad school. And so talk to me a little bit about that introduction.
It just seemed like I needed a place to stay. I got this full-time job with Central Indiana, and so I needed a place to stay. He needed a place to stay. We found this guy in south part of Muncie, took a garage, made it into an apartment, and 2-bedroom apartment. Yeah. So Sean and I jumped on it, and we lived happily ever, together for that. And it was fun. It was a great time. And, you had a Central Michigan guy coming down, so right. I was always kind of leery of him and the old Chippewas. But, it was a great time. Sean had some great friends that sent him a lot of video material, and that was previewed often, and it was a lot of fun. And I was working at a little bit of Yorktown still, but then I kind of transferred over to Westell because they had the contract with them, and met some great people. And Dr. Jones was when I met him when he was transitioning. And so that was an unbelievable time, and getting to reconnect with him this year at the Sweet 16 that you guys let me come and help. That was fantastic. Come full circle.
Yeah, and I think your first job is always an interesting experience, because you're really enthusiastic about what you want to do and stuff, and you're almost a little bit more idealistic about, I'm going to do it this way, or I'm going to act this way.
Right.
And then when you get there, you are you're kind of thrown into the reality of the situation. Oh, yeah. So and you had some, your first job at CIO, you were working with Jay Matchett and Keith Miller and Alan Hibansky and stuff, but you had Barb Zebart as one of your nurses, and I know Barb from...
She's ornery. She was ornery, and she wasn't gonna. She wasn't gonna take my crap. That's for sure. And so we had a great time. We dealt it out to each other. We had a fantastic working relationship, even though I was just there for a year. The amazing thing about that job is I got a lot of learning. Got to Dr. Hibansky sat with me, and I'll never forget it. And I still tell kids today. That if you listen to that athlete, patient, client, whatever you want to call them, if you listen to them, they'll tell you what's wrong. And if you just sit there for a second and really take it in, don't write anything down, just listen. And, I was doing this, and this happened, and that happened, and you're like, I know exactly what it is. And I never learned, for all the books that you study and for all the time that you're here, for him just to say, sit there and listen. They will tell you what's wrong.
Right.
They'll tell you exactly what's wrong. They don't know it because they don't have medical background, but if you listen well enough, they'll tell you what the problem is, and you may not have to run one test.
Yeah.
And so he worked with me on that, and he also, all those doctors there worked with me on learning how to read x-rays.
Yeah.
Which was, a neat feature that we, as students, you get to see them. But gosh, to be there every day and to look at x-rays, that was a neat thing, and to pick those up, and those relationships got to work in the operating room a lot.
Yeah.
When Ball State made it a major, they had a 196 class, I think it was, and I told Mike Farrar, I'm like, hey Mike, I want the major, and I'm here. I'm 2 classes shy. I need a Psych 100 class, and I need this 196 class. And I worked out a deal with Dr. Matchett. Every Friday, I'd watch surgery with him in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of having to take the class,
Yeah.
but it counted as the class. I'd write up an abstract about all the operations that he did, and I got to see some neat things. And in the operating room every Friday, not many students got to say that back in the day.
Yeah, no, and that's right when the arthroscopic surgery was kind of getting.
Oh my God, it was taking off. And the amazing thing I remember. Well, this isn't going to be a long surgery. Well, what do you want to listen to? Well, let's listen to Inagata Davida. I'm like, what operating room am I in right now? Wait for Jerry Garcia to walk in playing with the dead. And I'm like, this is an operating room. This is sacred. It's like, we're going to listen to music.
It's not a big deal to them. It's
their
office.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, it's like us in the athletic training room. It's like, we're just going to tape some ankles. We're just going to cut somebody open. So
yeah, exactly. Here we are. So from when did you get the call from Hobart? I mean, when did you find out about that?
So after the Colts was over, that 6-month position ended. I was going to go home, and the deal was I was going to look for a GA, and I kind of talked to Michigan a little bit, and they'd offered me the year before, and I took the internship with the Colts, which was great because Colts went 1-16, Michigan went to the Rose Bowl. So way to go, Mark, right? And so I go home, and my dad's a self-employed barber in town, and so he knew everybody. And the hospital in Hobart was going to open up a sports medicine clinic. And he's like, hey, why don't you throw your name in the hat? I'm like, all right. I was just going to go home. I was a substitute teach until, summer and to go do a GA. And so I interview, and next thing you know, I was offered the job.
Yeah.
And then the athletic trainer at Hobart, then Sam, my original mentor, was like, hey, I want to back down. Right. I've been here for a long time. I'm going to start cooling off. And I'm like, all right. So the hospital, we made a deal. And so I worked for St. Mary's, and I worked for a PT athletic trainer named Dave Franklin, who understood he was an athletic trainer first. And we're in this clinic, and in the morning I carried a patient load. Yeah. And then in the afternoon I filtered out to Hobart and worked football. And once football season was over, then I would work full-time in the clinic, all the time maintaining a full patient load, which was unheard of.
Yeah.
But man, the things I learned about physical therapy, it was just one of those, it was the cherry on top. It was, you got more experience, to practice your craft. And it wasn't just athletes, then it kind of, migrated into general population. That was athletic.
Yeah.
But maybe they were hurt at a construction facility. I worked with many police officers and firemen,
right?
Which was really neat. And the time at the Spectrum was great. But I was always at Hobart. I always felt I was that outsider looking in.
Right.
We had a contract, and everything was good, and blah blah blah. But I was never that teacher in the building. And I think that's really what I always wanted. And when my dad, I was getting ready. It took me a little bit longer to get out of here, but it was a double major, and I could have got out sooner if I just would have dumped the teaching part of it and got just the exercise science and gone on. But I think my dad's last gift was to make sure I had my teaching license, because then in 98, I ended up getting a call to be a teacher. But gosh, as much as I like working with athletes, and, in Indianapolis, got to work with a guy in the Hall of Fame, Eric Dickerson. The neat thing, when I went home, I worked on a veteran who stormed the beaches at Normandy.
Yeah.
Was in the Battle of the Bulge. I worked on a guy who was in the Bataan Death March. I worked on a lady who was a chemist that worked on the Manhattan Project in Chicago.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, and so the exposure. I got to work with a Secret Service agent. And it just in little Northwest Indiana, the amount of people that did so many things, not just locally, but for the country.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and I thought those were some really great years, because you got to work with some really good people, and the firemen and the police department, ended up doing some stuff with the fire department, which was really neat too.
Yeah.
So some enhancement stuff.
Yeah, kind of the precursor to the tactical stuff that's been out there.
It really was, and Dave, the way Dave Franklin looked at it is like, hey, we're just going to treat everyone as an athlete.
Yeah.
And so when a fireman got hurt at the end, I'll never forget. He's like, man, he goes, I know I'm coming off this ankle injury, but can I fight a fire? And our facility, we had work conditioning and work hardening. And I said, bring your bunker gear.
Yeah.
He's like, what? I go, bring your bunker gear. So the next day he brings his bunker gear and we put it on and we go an hour on a Stairmaster, the old school Stairmaster, on a treadmill, pulling a cart with weight in it and simulating pulling a fire hose. And after that hour, he looked at me and goes, I'm good.
Yeah.
So it was neat. It was like you took that fireman, made him an athlete to a point though when he looked at me and said I could fight a fire. Right. I knew we did our job. Yeah. As a clinic, we got this guy where he needed to be.
Yeah. And as important as any athlete you probably have ever worked on.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Because those guys, the policemen. I worked on a couple of canine officers. And their biggest concern was that dog pulling them.
Yeah.
And so what did we do? We got the dog and we brought the dog to the facility and all right, go on a track. And so here he is trying to fight the dog and hold the dog back while they work the track. And, when we were done, they're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this for an hour. I can do this for 2 hours. Yeah. And that was neat. And I didn't know that was, I didn't know, how did I know it was going to morph into this?
Yeah. It's turned into a whole business.
It is. Yeah. It really is. And, kudos to athletic training for allowing people to do that.
Right.
And think outside the box a little bit with, these people are athletes. These construction workers are athletes. These iron workers are athletes. And we're going to treat them as such.
And athletic training is so inclined to that anyway. I mean, it's just it's all about seeing what somebody does and then trying to gear whatever rehab or treatment that falls in line with whatever that skill or task is.
And that's the exposure working variety of sports.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. Early on, you asked me all the sports I got to work in. These were all of them. And so you just take that mentality and put it with a construction worker or a policeman or a fireman or a tactical SWAT person, and you're going to find a way to rehab them.
Right.
That's going to make it worthwhile to them. Because they're a high level person, and you got to buy them in, and you just treat them like an athlete, and they're gonna eat out of your hand.
Yeah. So you said you started teaching at Hobart in '98. You were working out of the clinic up until that point in time. So that's been like what 22, 23 years.
Well, I started teaching, so '98 there, and I started athletic training in '92.
Yeah.
So
You're going almost on 30 years here.
30 years of athletic training there.
Yeah.
And teaching 24-ish, 22.
What have you seen, you think, in that time that has been kind of the biggest shift or the biggest changes that you've seen at that level?
I think there's a lot. I mean, right. What high school athletic trainers started off as is where they are now is unbelievable. And I think, all the good that's come of it, from the concussion management to the heat management, to the mental health aspect, to the respect that the coaches now have for athletic trainers. And even when I first started, I worked for a guy that's in the Indiana Football Hall of Fame that one time had the most wins in Indiana. And I remember, and this was in 93-ish, 94-ish, a concussed kid, and we played Mondays. Kid got lit up pretty good. Tuesday, still had the headache. And so I held him out, which everyone thought that was crazy. Well, just, it's normal. And I'm like, no, something's up. Wednesday, I don't let him practice, and coach goes nuts. And, starts kind of yelling at me. And I always called him Coach Howell because he was my football coach. And I looked at him and said, Don, I've got this. Leave it alone. And he shut up. And then the next day, the kid ended up passing out, waking up out of bed. Yeah. Ended up being nothing, but still was concussed. Yeah. And after the game on Friday night, he's like, Mark, he goes, you saved my ass. I go, no, we saved each other's ass.
Yeah.
And so from there on, I knew that I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And even though concussion management wasn't a thing then, it was like there's more to this.
Yeah.
Didn't have the research, but now we do. And so much has changed, and I mean a lot of it for the good.
Yeah.
It's a lot to protect the player, to protect the athlete, and in the long run to try to protect the coach and the school. I think that's our job, and I like some of the changes. I'm very afraid of where we're going as a profession, and I don't want to get on that soapbox, but I just think that we're losing quality people to other things. Yeah. And I think that to have the stories that you and I talk about and all the other cast members that you've had on, I don't know if those people get those experiences. Yeah. And so therefore I don't think they have the buy-in to athletic training like we did.
Yeah.
And I think that's missing a little bit. Yeah. And I'm not sure if we can get that back.
It's definitely different in the aspect of the priority of in my opinion, the priority of clinical experience, and the emphasis of teaching all these advanced skills. That seems to be like the thing that they're trying to sell. Sure. Instead of back in the day, it was like you're going to get this much exposure, this much interaction with this clinical instructor that's had this many years of experience. Well, and it's not, that doesn't seem to be the priority.
And I'm not knocking what they're teaching. It's just, and I'm not sure the level that everyone's going to go to when they get out of a master's program. But I've been in this gig at the high school over 30 years. I've seen one IV dropped. Now, what would be my skill level if I've only done it once?
Yeah.
And suturing, that's great. That's a great thing to learn. But most of the sutures that I've ever seen put in are on the face, and they've had to have cosmetic surgery. So what am I doing? I think, letting us order x-rays is a better idea. I think those are some things that open us up to more opportunities to practice our craft.
Right.
And I think that there's some neat techniques out there. I'm not, as 2 athletic trainers for 400 athletes, I don't have time to dry needle. I don't have time to do a lot of that bonus stuff.
Right.
Because we're limited, and that's great that it's being taught. It's great that it's out there, but what's our primary focus?
Right. Yeah. And I think to not disparage what is the advancements that have been made, I still feel like a lot of when at the college level, when the college athletic trainers started having to get out of teaching because there was more demands being placed upon them by athletics, that took away something from that interaction. That's the one thing that in the past podcast that Glenn talked about was, Ron and JD were teaching classes, and Bud was Bud was teaching classes.
Sure.
But they were teaching classes, but they were also in the athletic training room that afternoon. And so he goes, you learned, you went and had people teaching you that you were also working next to or spending time with that were applying what they were teaching in class.
Well, and for those of us that are tactile learners, it's fantastic profession, because in the morning we would learn, the afternoon we go apply. Yeah. And so that's something that can't be taken away, and that's the part that I think is being lost. Yeah. And I think it's great they get some other exposure to other venues, but statistically, where are we going to end up? Yeah. And we always knew back in the day that if you wanted to be a college athletic trainer, you had to go get your master's. Yeah. That was understood. And because I didn't want to get my master's and I loved the high school level, right. That was really never something that I envisioned myself having to do. Yeah. I just liked working at the high school level. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. No matter what level you pick, there's nothing wrong with it. They all have pros and cons. Yeah. Right? The grass isn't always greener. Yeah. And I hear what goes on in college athletics, and some of it's a grind and some of it's not right. And the bottom line is that I always thought athletic trainers, their primary purpose was to protect a corporation or a college or
Right.
a professional team. And when that gets put off to the side, then our job becomes very murky.
And it does. I mean, and even now with COVID, it's we have protocols, but a lot of those protocols sometimes are subject to judgment calls by people that are not medical people, right? And because it is money nowadays. I mean, that's I can attest to the fact that there are many business decisions made that healthcare is kind of pushed to the side.
Sure.
And it's a business decision rather than a healthcare decision, and that's what's unfortunate. I think, I think you're gonna see that a little bit as this, and everybody's talking about the NIL stuff, but that's already affecting the high school kids a little bit. I mean, we saw a story about the kid from Texas that said, "I'm going to forego my senior year so I can go to Ohio State and make $5 million." Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that, and that's the unfortunate part. It is a money thing, but I think as time moves on, how are we going to protect ourselves? And I know we can document the crap out of stuff, but we need the backing of other people that make some decisions, because you're not going to keep good people in positions. They're going to leave because they're not treated right, or they can't look themselves in the mirror. Well, and that's the only one you have to satisfy.
Yeah, the exodus is already starting to happen at the college level. I mean, and you can people have said COVID, people have said whatever, but it's these college athletic trainers that are like, listen, I'm only making X amount of dollars, and you've made me do more and more stuff, and then you treat me like crap on top of that.
Right.
And I can go work in a clinic. I can go work in a high school and probably make more money than what I'm slugging it out here with.
Well, and what's neat, as much as I think that the profession tried to get rid of the teacher athletic trainer, they've now opened it back up.
Yeah.
Indirectly. And I tell people, why not, if you want to be an athletic trainer, go get your undergrad in health education.
Yeah.
And it'll mirror any program that will qualify you to get in. I said, and if you're at a small university, go talk to the athletic training staff. They'll let you be a student aide.
Yeah.
They'll let you sling water and be on the sidelines. They'll cherish the extra set of hands.
Yeah, because they don't have that help.
Because they don't have that help anymore. So go do that, and then go get your master's. But now you have your teaching license, and then you can make yourself more marketable.
Right.
And that's what I've always thought because I did come to Ball State to get my master's in administration and supervision, so I could be a principal. So that just made me more marketable. And I think if young kids coming out, they get their teaching license. I'm not saying teaching's a great profession either right now, but it opens up another door where you're not stuck to a clinic and maybe doing some things that you don't want to have to do, like patient direct or saying you have to use our doctors. Right. And if you don't, then my job is in trouble. That's tough. Yeah. It's a tough sell.
It is, and that's why it is. I hate to say, you're right. I mean, it is a scary time in our profession as those opportunities open up, but those conditions are stacked to them. But, well, listen, we've been talking for about an hour, and it's been a great conversation, and I think that we could probably have a couple more conversations. I know that I want to have a conversation with you and a couple of your buddies. If we could get Teeny on here, I'm sure there would be also. No.
That one, that would not be good.
Oh well, I'm sure that there'd be nothing incriminating about any of those stories whatsoever. But I think that you're going to think about 5 more things to talk about when we're done.
Oh, yeah.
And so we can have you back on, or we'll have you back on with Jessup. I need to get Dave on here, and we can have a lot of fun with that. And I think that's the idea of this, is that we're recording this, we're getting this, these stories and these experiences down and saved, and then we can, they're archived. Basically. And so we got it. So I appreciate you coming out today. I know you got to work later tonight. You're going to be sitting there buzzing people for the hell of it, having some fun with them. were maybe making some comments on a couple of plays and see what happens. But and we didn't get any chance to talk to you about what that does. I want to get into you with a little bit about your reserve police officer stuff, because I think that's kind of cool stuff too. Yeah. So we'll have to have you back on. But I really appreciate it, Mark.
Whenever you have time.
Yeah, and thanks for sitting down and talking to us.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be able to talk to you and reminisce.
Yeah, no kidding. It is honor, but fun. Doggone it. That's the biggest thing. So.
Yeah, great stories.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Troy.
I want to thank Mark for coming on today. It was kind of a busy schedule for him to make some time, so really appreciate him coming on. And it was some great stories to hear. I'm looking forward to bringing Mark back on with a few other people so we can kind of maybe get into a little more detail about those stories. But anyway, thank you for listening to Off the Roll. If you can give us a rate on whatever podcast platform that you're on, and kind of if there's a way to give us some feedback, we'd love to hear it. We're going to be working on some other things, a website or a way to leave feedback on a social media type situation with that. But it's our third episode, so we're still trying to work out some kinks with this, and I'm learning along the way as well. So thank you again for listening to Off the Roll, and have a great day.